We shall now move on to discuss a set of semantic properties of noun phrases, which in many languages are just purely semantic properties but may have morphosyntactic reflexes in others. These are all interpretive notions relevant to the use of articles in languages. We will begin first by talking about these features, and in the next unit continue to look at these properties in languages that lack articles. It is standard to assume that for languages with definite and indefinite articles, what the article does is create an argument out of a predicate. The word cat denotes what is true of all cats, and the addition of an article makes the noun phrase refer to an individual. If a definite article is used, then the reference will be to a particular cat. But if an indefinite article is used, the reference is to an individual that satisfies the property denoted by the predicate cat. In this way, one can say that what an article does, that is anchor linguistic entities to the real world. So what do articles actually mean? Let's take the case of the definite article first, where the proposals of Russell 1905 have been extremely influential. Russell proposed that the one feature that distinguishes the from a or an is the existence of one and only one entity meeting the descriptive content of the noun phrase. While the use of an indefinite description in a positive declarative sentence merely asserts existence of an entity meeting the description, use of a definite description, that is the, asserts its uniqueness in this regard. So when you say in English, for example, I met an owner of Priya, you're saying that there is at least one owner of Priya that I met and that there are more. Whereas if you say I met the owner of Priya, then there is only one and one owner. An English article the then contributes a meaning of exhaustivity. On Russell's analysis, both definite and indefinite descriptions are quantificational expressions. Just like explicit quantified NPs such as every apple, no unwanted visitors, etc. The meaning of the definite article lies in its demand for a reference that is uniquely identifiable to the hearer. This meaning is most salient in example like I met the owner of Priya, not an owner, right? Where the contrast of stress on the definite article brings out the sense of uniqueness. In contemporary linguistic semantics, the Russellian characterization of uniqueness has been adopted by and large, but with an extension to cover the case of plurals. In contemporary discussions, for example, Cadman 1990, the proper definition of the uniqueness meaning is in terms of maximality, an entity which includes all others. So if you say the books, it means it includes every instance of books in the current discourse content. In Cadman's words, definite noun phrases refer to a unique set, which is the maximal entity which fits their descriptive content. Indefinites then differ from definites in not requiring maximality. Rather, an indefinite just picks out some entity in the domain and asserts its existence, while definites take a set of entity and return the unique maximal entity in that set. To grasp this distinction, consider an example like a dog is eating, but a dog is not. This is extremely well formed. So is some dogs are eating, but some dogs are not. Because indefinites speak out an entity from and do not return the maximal entity, we can see a dog is eating but a dog is not to be well formed, because all this implies is that there is more than one dog in the context. However, what one cannot say, the dog is eating but the dog is not, because the use of the definite article gives you the interpretation that there is only one dog. Because the definite article picks out the maximal entity in the set, therefore this sentence is not well formed. This is also true of the dogs are sleeping, but the dogs are not. An indefinite article allows us then to pick up two distinct references for the phrase a dog, some dog, but the meaning of the just blocks this. When you use the, there is a unique maximal dog in the context. A unique maximal noun phrase always has the property of escaping the scope of negation, for having wide scope. Take the example, I didn't see the ghost. That is, this sentence can only mean there is a unique maximal ghost that I didn't see it. It cannot mean I didn't see any ghost. In an informal formulation, that means I didn't see the ghost can only be uttered when the speaker has the belief that there exists a unique ghost. Indefinites, which are non-maximal noun phrases, can either take wide or narrow scope with respect to negation. I didn't see a ghost means there is a ghost that I didn't see, which is the wide scope interpretation, or can mean I didn't see any ghost, which is the narrow scope interpretation. While maximality then seems to be a well-motivated semantic characterization of the difference between definites and indefinite, work by Christopherson 1939 and Haim 1988 has also shown us that an exclusively maximality-based analysis of the distribution of indefinite articles does not explain all their uses. Consider the following fragment of discourse. Given a sentence like a dog was barking, you cannot continue it with saying a dog had no tail. Rather, you must say a dog was barking, the dog had no tail. Why is it impossible to use the indefinite article to refer to the same entity in the discourse? And why must the definite article be used? This usage cannot follow from the maximality entailments of definite articles, as there is no claim here or no understanding that there are no other dogs in the context. Rather, Christopherson and Haim argue that the uses of the articles in a dog had no tail versus the dog had no tail are governed by discourse considerations of novelty and familiarity. While indefinite articles introduce a new referent into the discourse, definite articles instruct the hearer to refer back to the one that has already been introduced in the discourse. In other words, the definite article presupposes the existence of a referent, while the indefinite article introduces one. Going back to the impossible fragment continuation of a dog was barking, you can't say a dog had no tail because the use of the indefinite a dog in a dog had no tail would then presuppose that this was a novel referent. However, the use of the definite article as a continuation of a dog was barking, the dog had no tail, presupposes that there has been the referent has already been introduced in the discourse, which it has. There is considerable discussion in the literature as to whether maximality and familiarity are independent or related properties. We shall not be concerning ourselves here with that debate, and just to describe them, we can treat them as two distinct and binarily stated semantic features, plus minus maximal and plus minus familiar. Making the usual assumption that the features bundle together into feature geometries, the English articles could be captured by the following geometries. Its features are plus maximal and plus familiar. Its features are minus max and minus familiar. What about demonstrators? If you recall from the last unit, we leaned towards the proposition that demonstratives include both information about definiteness plus an information about deixis. English demonstratives would turn out to be minus maxima plus familiar, because you can say the dogs are barking, this dog is barking, but that dog is not. So they are not maximal categories. However, the use of a demonstrative is necessarily contingent upon the existence of the discourse referent, as I already mentioned in the previous discourse. Pronouns, on the other hand, are plus maximal and plus familiar. Using a pronoun necessarily entails that the referent has been mentioned in the discourse before and always refers to the sum total of the entities, the set that includes all members. Describing definiteness in terms of semantic features of maximality and familiarity will also allow us to look for those features in language that lack articles together, or either have just one definite article and no indefinite one, or vice versa. Many South Asian languages lack the definite article and use bare nouns, classifiers, and/or demonstratives to express these two notions. We shall return to these in the next unit. Another semantic property is the property of genericity. Generic reference is the term commonly used to describe noun phrase reference in sentences that expresses generalization and usually is understood as making reference to kinds of things. A sentence like "the hummingbird is a bird" shows that English generic reference can be affected by definite singular noun phrases. It can also be affected by indefinite singulars, as in "a hummingbird is a bird," and bare plurals as well. So, hummingbirds are birds. Definite plurals, on the other hand, lack generic reading. So, if you said something like "the hummingbirds are birds," the only reading available is that some salient set of hummingbirds, for example, the ones in the garden, are birds. Generic readings have been argued to result from more than one semantic mechanism. As discussed by Krivka and his colleagues, there are two types of genericity. The first is genericity at the noun phrase level, which arises because some noun phrases can denote kinds. So when you say the dodo bird is extinct, noun phrase here refers to the kind of the dodo bird. Kind readings are available to English definite singulars and bare plurals in such contexts, but not to indefinite singulars or definite plurals. So you can say the dodo bird is extinct, but you cannot say a dodo bird is extinct. You can say dodo birds are extinct, but you cannot say the dodo birds are extinct. The second kind of genericity arises at the sentence level by the use of a noun phrase in a characterizing sentence that expresses a generalization. For example, the brown bear is dangerous, or the brown bear is typically dangerous. This kind of sentential level genericity is expressed by all types of noun phrases, including barring definite plurals. So you can say the brown bear is typically dangerous, a brown bear is typically dangerous, brown bears are typically dangerous. However, the brown bears are typically dangerous is not allowed. Sentence level genericity is crucially sensitive to a variety of sentential factors. In all such cases, the generic force is due to some sentence level generic operator, typically embodied by habitual aspect, and also by the use of adverbials and adjectives like usually, typically, etc. What is also relevant here is the type of predicate, as it is that which determines which interpretation that the noun phrase can get. For example, with kind level predicates, that is, those that select for kind level arguments, such as invent, be rare, be widespread, be extinct. In all such cases, only definite bare plural noun phrases must be used. A second type of predicate that triggers sentence level genericity are what are known as individual level predicates. These are predicates that refer to permanent states of affairs, such as knowing French, being intelligent, being tall, being dangerous. Again, all these predicates don't trigger a generic interpretation for bare plural, indefinite singular, and singulars use with it. So if you say a Frenchman is tall, or girls know French, or the French are intelligent, in all three examples you get a generic interpretation of the noun phrase. A third kind of semantic interpretation that noun phrase can get is what has been called in the literature a specific interpretation. There is surprisingly very little consensus on what the term denotes, and different authors use the notion of specific interpretation distinctly. Intuitively speaking, what is signified by the term is embodied in the use of the phrase a certain X, as I met with a certain student of mine today. Phrases of these types are called specific indefinite, as because the noun phrase here is indefinite, picks out an individual who corresponds to my set of my friends or set of my students. However, it is noble only for the hearer, as the speaker clearly knows who the student is. It is in this latter point that the distinction between specificity and familiarity lies. While the discourse reference of familiar noun phrases are known to both the speaker and the hearer, the discourse reference of specific noun phrases are known only to speakers. Von Huizinga in 2011 argued, however, that a definition of specificity merely in these terms is insufficient. He takes the example of the following English sentence. According to Freud, every man unconsciously wants to marry a certain woman, his mother. It turns out that the speaker does not in fact have one particular reference for a certain woman in mind. Therefore, von Huizinga argues that the correct definition of specificity should be one that establishes a referential dependency between the specific NP through the concept of covariation. The denotation of the noun phrase a certain woman, von Huizinga argues, varies with the value of every man. And every time the value is fixed for a man, the referent of the specific indefinite is fixed as well. In von Huizinga's view, specificity is thus, quote, a marker for an expression that is referentially anchored to another expression, rather than absolutely related to the speaker of the sentence. Von Huizinga also shows that in a number of languages, this notion of specific indefiniteness is regularly grammaticalized. He cites the example from Turkish, where it is the accusative case suffix that indicates the specificity of the noun. Turkish, very much like Hindi, lacks a definite article altogether. But the use of the accusative case suffix gives the noun phrase a referentially anchored interpretation that is quite akin to a familiar reading. It is not, however, identical to the familiar interpretation, as non-maximal noun phrases can also be marked as specific. So in Turkish, when you use just a bare noun phrase with the accusative marking, it has both a maximal and a specific reading. When you use it with an indefinite article, it has a non-maximal reading. And when you use it with an indefinite article and an accusative case marking, then it has a non-maximal specific reading. A fourth kind of interpretation is the interpretation as the partitive. The partitive is a word, is either an article or a phrase or a case that indicates partialness. Partitives can be of two semantic types, based on whether it involves a part of a whole, which are called entity participes, or a subset of a larger set participes. A partitive expression has two parts: a partitive determiner, which is some quantifier or quantity expression, and the noun phrase. In many languages, such as English, the partitive determiner may be linked to the noun phrase by some sort of adposition, as in two of the men. Entity participes usually contain mass nouns or singular count nouns. So, half of a cookie, much of the cake, while set participes require plural count nouns, as in three of the linguists, many of the cats. The ungrammaticality of noun phrases such as one of the cookie follows from the impossibility of an entity being used with a set partitive determiner. This is captured by de Hoop's partitive constraint, which goes as follows. Only NPs that can denote entities are allowed in entity participes, and only NPs that can denote sets of entities are allowed in set participes. Furthermore, set participes are only able to refer to a proper subset of the set denoted by the NP. For example, as in the sentence, I met one of John's friends to be used felicitously, John must have two friends. This constraint follows from a general anti-uniqueness restriction on participes, by which they cannot refer to a unique individual or set of individuals. The world's languages, partitive determiners may be exclusively set denoting or entity denoting in character, or they could be ambiguous. Items like percentages, fractions, and the quantifier much are exclusively entity denoting. And while numeral expressions and quantifiers like many are exclusively set denoting. The quantifiers all, some, and most are ambiguous. Although a number of languages express the feature partitive by articles, for example French, the expression of this feature can be made elsewhere in the grammar. Finnish, for example, expresses this feature through its case marking, through a special partitive case. If you want, we can utter the statement, I found the butter, versus I found some butter, by the use of a partitive case and I found some butter. All in all, we've explored 6 semantic features of nominals and noun phrases: maximality, familiarity, genericity, specificity, partitivity, and these, in the next unit, we will look now to see how these features are expressed in South Asian languages.